Check this out. That was, of course, the first scene that you see in the 1984 movie Red Dawn, starring the late, great Powers Booth and Patrick Swayze, may they rest in peace, Leah Thompson, Jennifer Grey, C. Thomas Howell, and the now infamous Charlie Sheen. Oh, it gets better, but before we get to the next clip, welcome to Rebel Intel, where I discuss everything military, law enforcement, intelligence, international relations, global security and resolution, and much more. And with that introduction out of the way, let's go right into the next clip. Check this out.
43 to $87 million a week going to the Taliban.
No one thought it could ever happen here. They are an army of international terrorists.
America has not been invaded by a foreign enemy in nearly 200 years.
Their target, America. Their objective, control.
18 hours from now, America will be a different place.
Now, only one thing stands in their way. It's time to die.
That was the trailer to the 1985 Chuck Norris movie, Invasion USA. Yeah, the title of the movie is Invasion USA. Well, there it is. Hollywood, at the very least, was trying to scare the shit out of all the Americans with movies like Red Dawn and Invasion USA, among many others. But what was really going on in the global security scene throughout the mid-'80s? Well, the CIA had assessed that the Soviets were not doing too good, militarily in Afghanistan or economically. As early as 1982, the Soviets had tracked poor morale among the troops in Afghanistan and a stagnant and then later declining economy. So, fast forward to 1989, 1990 era, the end of the George Bush 41 administration, he was able to project a massive amount of shocking military offensive force overseas into Panama, and then later Operation Desert Shield/Storm as the Soviets were withdrawing. 1991 rolls in, the Soviet Union collapses, George Bush loses his bid for presidency, Bill Clinton comes in. Under Bush 41, he had already started defense and intelligence cuts. In the Clinton era, due to the collapse of the Soviet Union, it provided him what they called the peace dividend, and he was able to continue and even deepen cuts into the defense budget and the intelligence budget. What basically additionally happened was that the Clinton administration shut down several key forward operational bases, or FOBs, throughout the Middle East and Central Asia. And this is about the time that we pick up the final scene of the movie Charlie Wilson's War. Check it out.
Listen, not for nothing, but do you know the story about the Zen master and the little boy?
Oh, is this some from Nitsa, the Greek witch of Aquilippa, Pennsylvania?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is. There's a little boy. On his 14th birthday, he gets a horse. And everybody in the village says, how wonderful, the boy got a horse. And the Zen master says, we'll see. 2 years later, the boy falls off the horse, breaks his leg, and everybody in the village says, how terrible. And the Zen master says, we'll see. Then a war breaks out, and all the young men have to go off and fight, except the boy can't because his leg's all messed up. And everybody in the village says, how wonderful.
Now, the Zen master says, we'll see.
So you get it.
No, because I'm stupid.
You're not stupid. You're just in Congress.
Send them money.
You can start with the roads, move on to the schools, factories.
Gus, now it's a party.
Restock the sheep herds, give them jobs, give them hope.
I'm trying.
Yeah, well, try harder.
I'm fighting for every dollar.
Yeah.
I took you from 5 million to $1 billion. I broke the ice on the sting in the Milan. I got a Democratic Congress in lockstep behind a Republican president.
Well, that's not good enough, because I'm going to hand you a code word classified NIE right now, and it's going to tell you that the crazies have started rolling into Kandahar like it's a fucking bathtub train.
Jesus, Gus, you could depress a bride on her wedding day.
Hey. Listen to what I'm telling you.
Listen to the background. It's an airplane. Now look at this. There's such a thing as unintended consequences, especially when you've been as reckless as we have. That line of Charlie's comes directly from an interview, supposedly with Zbigniew Brzezinski, an interview that he later refuted, where he defended the decision to arm and train the Mujahideen just as Charlie does here. This scene is followed by one several years later where Charlie is at home when the Pentagon is struck on 9/11, the explosion reverberating through his house. They also wanted to depict a scene of the Pentagon smoldering. In the 2006 script, Gus's predictions of dire consequences were toned down into the dialogue we see in the movie. However, the 9/11 scene remained in the script at this point, though it was not included in the final film. While there are reasons for the CIA to be happy that these scenes were changed or deleted, media reports have documented how Charlie Wilson himself, along with Joanne Herring, put pressure on the producers to dilute and change the ending to not draw a direct line between the CIA Operation Cyclone and 9/11 and the rise of Al-Qaeda. Now let's flash back to 1984 again, in this scene that I have just this one image of the movie Red Dawn, where Powers Booth's character, this U.S. Air Force colonel that got shot down, he's explaining to the kids up in the mountains exactly how it is that the Soviets and Cubans were able to invade America. And he says, filtrators came up illegal from Mexico. That was part of what enabled this huge Soviet and Cuban airdrop into America for the whole scene of the movie Red Dawn. Now let's move forward again and cut to this scene with Sarah Adams doing an interview with Chad Robichaux.
Coordinated attacks in Russia's southern region of Dagestan.
A lot of people focus on the humanitarian dollars. According to people I talk to, when the plane comes weekly,
the terror that was unleashed.
Depending on the weight of the plane, it has between
an explosion could be heard from inside the stadium.
43 and 87 million. If 40 million's humanitarian dollars, 47 million is given in pure cash to do counterterrorism operations. So obviously, the Taliban is not doing effective counterterrorism operations.
Now, there's going to be another point in another clip where she's going to talk about the WFP, or World Food Program, and essentially her assertion that they're basically providing material support for Al-Qaeda now. There's not much of a bifurcation in her assessment on what exactly is it that they're doing. Is it complicit? Is it complacent? Are they knowingly doing this and then turning a blind eye? I don't know if she explains that in further detail, but I know one of the things that she doesn't explain is that the World Food Program also has connections to USAID. USAID, we know, also has connections to Central Intelligence Agency, and we know that the Central Intelligence Agency basically used to do this job of all of the facilitation and material support for the Mujahideen in Afghanistan that rose to become Al-Qaeda and the extremists in the first place. Let's check out her next clip.
Sarah Adams is an award-winning targeting officer and global threat advisor, former CIA officer, counterterrorism analyst, and CIA targeter with extensive domestic and international experience.
Okay, you keep hearing about this former CIA targeter. What is a targeter? Well, the targeter really doesn't do a whole lot more than any other analyst. A targeter will have all of this mapped out to let people know if there's an opportunity to conduct a strike or get some type of intelligence collected on any of these entities in the chart. Let's go back to the video.
We have been giving money continuously to Iran for years. Is the money that the White House is sending to Iran, is that making its hands in the terrorist attacks?
Well, show me the dollar moving from the government to the terrorists. It's like, no, when you infuse a government with billions of dollars, it opens up the other cash reserves so they can better fund Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, etc.
It's just business, right? You can reallocate money.
Yeah, they have more money. And that's the part that people get lost on, right?
But another thing that the people get lost on is the black budget of the CIA. Exactly how much dollars are going in there and exactly who's on the ground conducting what kind of operations to potentially facilitate insurgencies such as Jabhat al-Nusra in Syria. What was the CIA doing, in fact, in Benghazi?
Al-Qaeda has a multi-coordinated attack in the works that they're planning for the U.S. It was supposed to be for 2025. It sounds like they got their attackers here earlier, so it could happen at any time.
How many do you think potentially terrorists in the United States that made it through in the last 3 years?
I think 1,500 approximately.
They're here.
Okay, so now we have Al-Qaeda actually coming into America. Who facilitated Al-Qaeda, or what would become Al-Qaeda, coming into America before? And make no mistake, the CIA knew that as they brought these guys in, these guys were not grateful to the host nation. They harbored deep resentment and hatred of America. It was the CIA that facilitated them before.
What are we doing about this? What can we do about this if they're already here?
It's like the
everybody knows about it. Nobody's doing nothing about it.
It's not being talked about, right? Because if the veteran community really understood that we're paying for the families of the martyrs, like, you think they'd be all in their Congress people's office being like, stop the money now, stop the money now.
We gave you something to do.
Now, not only is America funding, as Sarah says, these basically we're providing stipends for jihadis that have known to have been slain. Well, not only that, when the U.S. does not release a Gitmo detainee, the official U.S. policy is that we transfer a Gitmo detainee to a host nation. We actually pay that host nation not only to pay for additional security and surveillance, but we pay them to pay the former Gitmo detainee a monthly stipend.
What China likes to do is they like to do an influence, in a passive way, right? Sow some dissent, and China likes to do that.
China likes to sow dissent. We do the same thing against China, and as I pointed out in previous posts about my final thesis in the bachelor's program, which was on OSS and CIA PSYOP from about the end of World War II to present, what do you think the CIA does? The CIA does the same thing, but the CIA is the largest, most well-funded, and most technologically advanced intelligence apparatus in the world with a black budget. A black budget thanks to 9/11 and the end of the peace dividend. The Soviet Union went away. Here's another threat. A threat that supposedly the CIA couldn't get it through to policy and decision makers. Hey, there's this threat out there, despite all that we know pre 9/11, that the entire system was flashing red. And they continued to basically downgrade security and defense posture.
That's why they amplify, political things we argue about in this country. People think things go viral because Americans care. Well, no, like China or Russia are pulling the strings and making a lot of that go viral. Talk about aid, but there's also the World Food Program. Their food is actually what is the food served at all the Al-Qaeda's training camps. So the World Food Program is feeding the terrorists being trained. That's how bad it is.
And now one of the things that's going on is that the CIA is receiving funding for counterterrorism training and support for anti-Taliban. But at the same time, we're still funding the Taliban. And the U.S. also essentially recognizes them as the legitimate government of Afghanistan. And I, as an analyst, told military personnel as far back as about 2008, maybe 2009, Afghanistan will always be Taliban. So I don't get what people don't know about this. And this isn't just Congress acting like they don't know. It's also CIA personnel and others either not raising enough of a voice, or the trusted analysts that have the ability and time to talk to policy and decision makers. Something is not connecting properly there. Now again, it used to be the CIA covertly, essentially through Al-Kifa and Mektab al-Khidamat, which stands for Office of Services in Arabic. That used to be run by a Palestinian by the name of Abdullah Azzam. Once Abdullah Azzam was killed and Osama bin Laden took over, and bin Laden's part of a family that the Saudis have close relationship, and many bin Ladens were also here in America. I'm not quite sure where the disconnect happened, but apparently a couple of the bin Ladens decided that they would try to buck the system.
Yeah, it's so insane to me. U.S. taxpayer dollars, we're paying for training, paying for the food to prepare an enemy for another attack on us.
Now, at this point in the post here, I want to point out how dramatic they all make this. You see how dramatic they're making all this? This is Hollywood here. So who's really trying to do an influence or information or propaganda psyop here?
What could the audience do on a personal level? I mean, they don't work in the White House. What can they do on a personal level to prepare for something like this?
I think that's what we have to get our mind around. These terrorists are trained in ways that, yes, our soldiers seen, but everyday Americans don't have any concept of the capabilities and what they're willing to do.
Okay, now we want to talk about preparedness. This is where everybody's being told preparedness and security at churches, because they're telling you that Al-Qaeda is going to launch a coordinated attack coast to coast targeting churches and synagogues in the U.S. And I've been saying for some time now, it's not probably going to be mostly Islamic extremism. It's going to be left and right extremism, and that is exactly what we're seeing. But they're selling you fear partially for preparedness, prepping training, prepping gear, buying all this Gucci gear that you probably don't need. And by the way, most Christians that I know practically want the rapture to occur. So they're not afraid. In fact, many of them have a sticker on their vehicles that says NOTW, not of this world. They're just like a lot of the Islamic extremists in that way. So I don't quite understand about the fear-mongering here, but it's essentially hyping something up to sell it. And the American people are never going to wrap their brain around this security-wise, because even Navy SEALs and others can't be on condition orange, ready for an attack all the time. You just can't live like that 24/7. But that's what it seems like they're trying to get people in America to be like, and it's never going to be that way. Okay, so there we go with one of Sarah Adams' interviews from about a year ago with Chad Robichaux. Now let's go back to things that Sarah Adams says, the CIA in general, or global security post 9/11 in general. Take a look at this image that I got a screenshot of Sarah Adams during an interview with Sean Ryan. They've almost always got her book, Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, in the background. They have several camera angles on her because it's a huge studio production, much like Chad Robichaux. And the title of the book, Know Thy Enemy, is pretty interesting because Sarah and others admit that their intelligence of the threat environment there was terrible. In fact, the rumor intelligence, or scuttlebutt if you're in the Navy, was that the CIA actually conducted source operations with some personnel that they later found were suspected Al-Qaeda. But what does Al-Qaeda mean anymore? Because it seems like Sarah Adams lumps almost anything global Salafist jihad into Al-Qaeda. Well, there's an article about this that came out about the time of the attack on the embassy or consulate or CIA annex and diplomatic mission in Benghazi. This comes from the New Yorker, and this is a quote they used from David Kirkpatrick's excellent piece in the New York Times regarding the attack on the American diplomatic installation in Benghazi, September 11, 2012, where 4 Americans died tragically. May they rest in peace. Kirkpatrick managed to use shades of gray in his rendition of what happened, which is rare. Months of investigation by the New York Times centered on extensive interviews with Libyans in Benghazi who had direct knowledge of the attack there and its context, turned up no evidence that Al-Qaeda or other international terrorist groups had any role in the assault. The attack was led instead by fighters who had benefited directly from NATO's extensive air power and logistic support during the uprising against Colonel Gaddafi. And contrary to claims by some members of Congress, it was fueled in large part by anger at an American-made video denigrating Islam. In other words, it was the people the Obama administration judged to be our allies who turned on us. I want you to think about that a while. And by the way, in case you didn't know, Ambassador Stevens couldn't fly into Tripoli. Do you know how he got into Benghazi? He actually got into Benghazi in a port as he landed on a Greek cargo vessel. Yes, Admiral Stevens arrived in Benghazi in a Greek cargo vessel. By the way, Sean Ryan wants you to buy gold. He has a link, SeanLikesGold.com. And it's starting to see it's all about selling. It's all about marketing and advertising here. So going back to Sarah Adams, another thing that she's claiming is that Hamza bin Laden is alive. Well, that's something that we can't verify because she's one of the only people saying this. She's saying that British intelligence leaked it to the British press. I only see it in a couple of reports. I'm not sure who's saying what, but most of the U.S. intelligence and others are saying that they got Hamza bin Laden years ago, but Sarah is refuting that, and she's saying they have all of this evidence that he's actually reinvigorating Al-Qaeda at a location in Afghanistan. But it's 2025, and they can provide no video or other evidence of this. So she gets pissed off when the FBI or others are laughing at her or ignoring her. I don't know what she wants or expects, but another one of the things that she claims that we can get a little bit more information on here is that she tried to warn the embassy in Bamako, Mali about impending Al-Qaeda type attacks. And she's saying that they don't have the correct posture there. As you can see here from travel.state.gov, they've had a travel advisory, level 4, which is the highest level of warning, do not travel. I have no clue exactly what Sarah Adams is trying to claim there, but in a bunch of other claims that other people are making, and they're kind of piggybacking off of something that they claim to hear from Sarah Adams. They're showing screenshots. I don't know how they get this, but they're getting screenshots of El Nuba magazine, which is an online ISIS propaganda magazine. It's basically a newsletter saying, hey, they're doing operations in Mali, Mozambique. Here's a huge article on Libya. These jihadis over here are doing well in North Somalia, in the Puntland, and they're attacking the Christian forces of the government there, Nigeria, elsewhere. But what these people are saying, and they're kind of inferring that Sarah is saying this, is that, again, there is supposed to be a coordinated Al-Qaeda nationwide attack in America on a single date across the nation, targeting churches and synagogues. Now, they've previously reported that it was going to be hospitals. That was several months ago. Again, I talked to police officers and SWAT officers locally, and they said that they hear about a threat like this on the weekly. So at any rate, that's as prepared as we can get. They seem to be posturing as if we're not just supposed to be Boy Scouts and be prepared. We're supposed to be at a 24/7 higher state of readiness than even Israel. And I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I think that there's several things that Sarah is saying, and the way it's presented is rather hyperbolic and kind of Hollywood. And I think that it's either disingenuous or partially for sales and to try to boost her. And she may be an annuitant or basically still working for the CIA, as we understand CIA PSYOP operations to begin with.